Hello, this is Jay Leon and Beginning Sailboat Racing, and today we're going to talk about the first leg, the upwind leg of the race. So every race starts by going across a starting line, generally between a buoy and a race committee boat, and that line is usually perpendicular to the orientation of the wind, and the first leg is usually straight upwind towards the weather mark. And boats can't sail straight into the wind, of course. You have to sail about 45 degrees off the wind. So everybody starts generally on starboard and sails up the race course to get to the weather mark. And the main objective, of course, is to get there first. And in order to perform well in your upwind leg, you need to not sail behind somebody else. So a sailboat going upwind casts what's called a wind shadow. It goes back kind of like this. And you don't want to be sailing behind or below anybody else's wind, because they will be taking the wind, and if you're sailing in here, you're going to be going slower because this boat will be taking your wind. So you need to proceed up the race course in a way that gives you what we call clear air, or uninterrupted wind. So when you come off the starting line, it's not uncommon to be in the second row or behind some other boat somehow. So you want to look for an opportunity to tack and maybe head off in the other direction, like that, where you wouldn't be in somebody's bad air. And so the first thing you're thinking about when you're sailing up the upwind leg is trying to sail in clear air, not in somebody else's wind. Bear in mind that as you come off that starting line, everybody's going to be on starboard, and so you don't want to tack until you can, in your mind, see how you're going to get through the other starboard tack boats, because as soon as you tack onto port off of the starting line, you're not going to have the right of way. You're going to be the port tack boat, and you're going to either need to be able to get across whatever starboard tack boats are coming, or go behind the other starboard tack boats. But definitely, if you come off the starting line behind somebody else and you're in bad air, absolutely make sure to look over your shoulder before you tack, because when you tack onto port, you are not going to have the right of way. So we proceed up the upwind leg, tacking back and forth, trying to sail in clear air until we get to a point which we call the ley line. And so, since all boats, no boats can sail straight into the wind, and boats generally sail about 45 degrees off the wind, there's an imaginary line 45 degrees down from the weather mark that if you get to that line, you will be able to sail straight to the mark, and we call that the ley line. And it doesn't make any sense to sail beyond that line and tack, because if you do that, if you sail up here and you tack here, you will have sailed extra distance. You don't need to go out there in order to get to the mark. So we call that overstanding. You don't want to go past the ley line because you're just sailing extra distance on your way to the first mark. So you want to make your plan in your head on how you're going to get to that mark, and you'll probably tack a few times going up the race course. And when you get closer to the weather mark, you want to be looking over your shoulder and imagining this line and try to tack somewhere near it so that you can lay the mark. And since most boats tack through 90 degrees, when you're sailing along on port here to go to the starboard tack ley line, you just think of a imaginary spot 90 degrees from the direction that you're sailing, and when that lines up with the mark, you'll know that you're nearby to the ley line, and you can then try to find a spot to tack there where you're not going to be tacking right behind somebody else. Now, most everybody wants to get onto this starboard tack ley line to go around the mark. So it does get a little bit crowded there as you get close to the weather mark. And you might end up overstanding a little bit just because you want to have clear air. So if you come in and there's a couple other boats there, you might go up on their hip here a little bit just to make sure you can keep sailing as fast as possible, even though there might be a little bit of extra distance because you've gone past the ley line. It's a good idea to give yourself a little bit of room there. It also happens that some people are going to get out here on the race course all the way to the left side and be coming in right along this port tack ley line. Since boats on starboard have the right of way, this is a dangerous thing to do, and I would discourage you from doing it as a beginner. It's just tricky because the boats that are going around the mark this way are going to be on starboard. You're going to be coming along on port. There's boats already lined up here on starboard, and there isn't any room for you to get in there. So it's a good idea not to let yourself get pushed all the way out to the port tack ley line as you're going upwind. So main idea is to sail in clear air. Don't foul anybody on port starboard. Work your way out towards the starboard tack ley line. Get set up on that ley line and go around the mark. So that's your first upwind leg.